We are beginning the fourth installment of the affirmations, the 6 affirmations of our denomination. We've covered the centrality of the Word of God, the necessity of the new birth, the commitment to the whole mission of the church. Leslie gave that the week before. And today we are tackling the affirmation, the church as a fellowship of believers. Honestly, for me, the church has been a bit of a lifelong mystery. Even for me, when I started pastoring, I had this nascent piecemeal understanding of the church, but I kind of had to put it together as I went. Last week, I had the privilege of going down to Mount Angel, which is a monastery south of Portland. I don't know if you guys know the language of a thin place, and where heaven and earth are closer. For me, Mount Angel is one of those places. And I was in a conversation around a table, and when we were eating, and one of the people asked me, what happened in my life to bring me to a place where I thought, hey, maybe I should be a pastor. And so I had to explain it to them that I kind of backed into being a pastor. It was not a normal route. I was working at a basketball camp. I was 24 or 5, and I just finished college. I know, that's late for that. I screwed around a lot. But I was working at a basketball camp, and a woman, a friend of mine, Ruth Knight, said, hey, listen, my dad's church out in Springdale, which is this way 45 miles, they don't have a pastor right now. Do you want to come out and talk? And I'd given one sermon up to that point, and I said, sure, why not? Of course. And so I went out and gave a talk. I can tell you exactly what I talked on because it was so, it was a moment in time for me. I went back to work coaching basketball that next week. About Wednesday, Ruth comes back up to me and said, hey, my dad's church still didn't have a pastor. You want to talk? And I just go, sure, of course. And then the following week, I'm working another week of basketball camp, and she comes and said, okay, look, they still don't have anybody to talk. Will you want to talk again? And I said, of course. And then Robbie and I went out there, and they asked us if we would be their pastor. Now, I had really never been involved in a church before. And all of a sudden, I found myself in this strange, awkward place of running one. And after I took the job, I honestly didn't know what to do. What does a pastor do with 40 hours a week? I was sitting there going, I sit in the office and I just stare at the wall. I got to come up with something to validate my existence here. What can I do? And I didn't know anything about it. What do you do? I'm still working on that after 41 years. But the other thing is, though, I not only didn't understand what a pastor does, I didn't even know what the church was supposed to do because I had never been involved in a church at that moment, and I found myself in a particular place where I had to make some decisions. Several years ago, I was listening to this speaker at a conference, and he made the comment that life is full of multiple conversions. Now, before you think I'm a heretic, I think there is conversion to Jesus. There is that conversion. And if you haven't had that, talk to me afterwards. I'd love to talk to you. But in life, there are all these other crossroads that you come to where you convert, your idea of how things work is converted. And while I was at this church in Stevens County, I became acquainted with the church, and I was converted. This is the actual church building right there. It was really cool. We lived in a log cabin, 1-bedroom log cabin. That was part of our pay package. And we had no heat. We had a barrel stove in the basement. And so I thought it was so cool going out and cutting wood and storing it and going pitch it in the stove for about a month. And then I thought, I don't like this even a little bit. I'm not that person. So while I was there, though, I was converted to the church, its mystery and its potentiality and its vulnerability and its complexity. I had no idea what it was about, so I had to start asking questions. What's it for? And what did God want from the church? And over the years, I've kind of come up with several ideas, and I'll share just a few of them today to help fill out that affirmation, because I don't know if you felt like that was a little bit like, what does that even mean? I'm going to help you a little bit. So the first point I'm going to say is the church is a social community. The church is a social community. This is just for smiles. It has nothing to do with my sermon, really, except for, go ahead and shoot this. I was down at Terrain a couple weeks ago. Oh, grats, you can't hardly see it. Can you guys read that? I saw it on the wall. I saw all these art exhibits, and I thought, oh, these are boring. And then I came across this one. This is what it says. I want to find community, but I also do struggle with hating everyone. I related to it a little. I don't know how many times I've heard people say to me, I don't go to church. I don't need church. I belong to the larger church, the Church Universal. And in one way, anybody who has confessed Christ is a part of the universal church. But that said, another thing has to be considered, and that is if an individual says this, it betrays an essential concept of this idea of the church being social. It's made up of real people. It's made up of real places. When you think of Paul's letters, these letters were written to a particular community in a particular social location. It wasn't an idea, it was a group of people. In Matthew chapter 16, this is a very familiar passage to most of you, or a lot of you, but Jesus came into this region of Caesarea Philippi with his disciples, and he asked them, what do the people say, who do the people say that I am? And they responded, well, some say you're John the Baptist, some say you're Elijah, some say you're Jeremiah, some say that you're another one of the prophets. And he turns and says, what about you guys? Who do you say that I am? And Simon Peter answered, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Jesus replied, blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father in heaven, which must have been quite an affirmation to Peter. Like, I got a revelation. I mean, I'm going to remember this one. And then it goes, and I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not overcome it. Now, you have to understand, generally speaking, there's 114 instances of this Greek word ekklesia in the New Testament. And almost all of them refer to a group of people, an assembly. The actual literal lexicon definition is this: a gathering of citizens called out from their homes into some public place, an assembly. That's the church. So to have it up here as a theory doesn't actually wash with the New Testament. And this is crucial because we live in what some people describe as an epidemic of loneliness in our country. Aloneness. Studies show that the average American hasn't made a new friend in the last 5 years. Many people report having no one that they could even get a hold of in a crisis. Major health organizations and researchers have stated that loneliness is a public health epidemic, listen, as dangerous as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Now listen, in case you don't know what that means, that's bad. But if you have a lot of community, smoke away, whatever. You're kind of like... Sorry, I need to... So this is why the church matters right now. In a world drowning in isolation, God offers us something radically different. Embodied community. Not virtual, not a webinar, not a podcast. It's not even optional. Not someday, with real people, in real places, doing real life together. Paul gives us an amazing picture of some of the dynamics of what this social community is supposed to include. This is from Romans 12. Love must be sincere, hate what is evil, cling to what is good, be devoted to one another in love, honor one another above yourselves, rejoice with those who rejoice, and mourn with those who mourn. Notice Paul here is describing a community that enters into the full range of human experience together. Joy and sorrow, celebration, suffering, prosperity, and need. This isn't superficial social interaction. It is life-on-life community. And this kind of community forms us into the way we can achieve life the way God intended. A community is a formational environment. Let me explain that. In Ephesians chapter 4, Paul writes, "Instead, speaking the truth in love, we will grow up to become in every respect the mature body of him who is the head, that is Christ. For him the whole body, joined and held together by every supporting ligament, grows and builds itself up in love as each part does its work." In circles that I run around in, the idea of formation or discipleship is a regular part of the conversation. Almost every pastor I know either celebrates or pines over the need for discipleship. But most churches, now listen to this, most churches, when that topic comes up, it always goes to the idea of content. Content. Knowing a lot about something is the way to be mature. While knowledge is important, is it really the center of Christian growth? Is our creed really something like this? We are educated into maturity. Now, knowledge is crucial. Don't hear me say something different. Jesus himself said, you'll have the truth, you'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free. But there are some experiential things that I think most of us who have been around the church for a while have to go, wait, there's a lot of people floating around out there with a head full of Bible stuff that might be the nastiest or meanest people we know. So just content is not the complete answer. If we look at Paul's words about maturity, it's all related to learning in the context of others. Others who will hold us accountable, others who will challenge aberrant ideas and thoughts, others who carry with them a history of thought held in the church through the ages. In other words, this story's been around and keeps going. In other words, content is crucial. I'm not saying that it's not, but I would suggest that the content must be onboarded in the context of a larger learning community, the church. There's one other piece that this social community relates to, and that's the idea of emotional care. Paul writes again, Galatians 6:2, "Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ." The community of faith provides a cradle, if you will, to receive the grace of common care. There are needs that people have that just are in God's lane. It's not in the church's lane. So to expect the church to meet every need that you have is not biblical either. But there are things that the church is supposed to meet us in. That is crucial. We need the social dimension of the church. We need each other. But listen, here's what makes this gathering different than every other group: book club, coffee meetup, family reunion. This is my second point. The church is a Jesus community. It's a community of Jesus. Connecting has always happened for protection, sustenance, procreation, dance parties. Okay, it takes two to tango, so I figured I'd throw that in there. By the way, when I first became a Christian, I was told to avoid premarital sex because it might lead to dancing. On any given week, you can find people gathering because we are hardwired to do this. Yeah. It applies to some people more than others. We're hardwired, whether it's a concert or party or family gathering or whatever. All of that is good. But there's a demarcating feature of the church, and that is there is someone at the center, someone who connects it, who empowers it, who defines it. Listen to this. I'm living in Paul this morning, so forgive me if you want to get into the Gospels, I'm here. Colossians 1:17, and he is before all things. Jesus, in him all things hold together, and he is the head of the body, the church. Jesus is the center of the church. He is the head of the church. You can read the rest. But we are invited into a different community. We're invited into literally the dance of God. And I'm going to shoot another quote up here for you. This is from the book Generous Orthodoxy by Brian McLaren. And we're invited into the dance of God himself. He uses this ancient concept called perichoresis. And it's a Trinitarian concept. And this is what he writes. Every church leader describes the Trinity using the term perichoresis. Peri, which is circle, and choresis, which means dance. The Trinity was an eternal dance of Father, Son, and Spirit sharing mutual love, honor, happiness, joy, and respect. By the way, that infers that community was at the central point of God's existence. But he goes on. Against this backdrop, God's act of creation means that God is inviting more and more beings into the eternal dance of joy. That's what makes the church unique. We're not just a gathering, we're being caught up into the eternal movement of God's love. Jesus is not just our topic. He is our center. He is our rhythm, our reason for moving together. And this Jesus community doesn't just gather for itself. It points beyond itself. And so the third point is the church is a directional community. I have a parenthetical thought, or a sign, or an eschatological, whatever you want to call it, but it's looking somewhere else. There was a quote that came out attributed to St. Francis years and years ago, but it kind of always bugged me. This is what the quote is. Preach the gospel at all times, if necessary, use words. And it kind of bugged me because it minimized the idea of a public declaration. We have to use our mouths. Maybe or maybe not is what he was getting at, but the one thing it does do is speaks to the nonverbal messaging that unquestionably is always happening. The church is sending a message at all times, whether we like it or not. We're sending messages to the world. The church is a sign, not just a verbal declaration. Another thing that we must hold regarding the church is that it is to a point that it's pointing somewhere else. What is described in the future defines life today for us. From the beginning, one of the main challenges has been, what does this community communicate? When people observe it, what values can they conclude? What cultural message is being sent? What vision of life does it naturally convey? Those are all questions that point somewhere. The way that our church, or every church, engages with the world is actually speaking a message. Sadly, many of the signals or messages that the church is giving are signs that the church has committed itself to something quite different than God's ultimate loving and peaceful reign. Things like church leaders covering for other aberrant or abusive leaders, or whole arms of the church being co-opted to political parties for power, control, and influence, thus sending messages to people who are actually seeking God that confuse them or sometimes even repel them, turn them away from God. The church is meant to be a sign pointing to how things will be and can be. That's why we recite the Lord's Prayer. If you come to prayers tomorrow morning, you'll hear this prayer recited, the Lord's Prayer. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done at Immanuel as it is in heaven. Or in Spokane as it is in heaven. Or in the Washington State, or you can fill that blank in, but it's on earth as it is in heaven. It's inviting the inbreaking of what God is doing into the present. During the Civil Rights Movement, many black churches in the South became these directional communities. When the world said segregation was normal, the church proclaimed God's vision of unity. When violence ruled the day, the church practiced nonviolent resistance. When despair was everywhere, the church sang songs of freedom. Dr. Martin Luther King preached about the beloved community, that it wasn't just a distant dream, but it was a present reality, a reality that they were supposed to live into right then. They were being the sign that pointed toward God's future. The world noticed, and the church's witness helped others see something greater. That's what we're called to be, a preview. You guys hear that? We're being abducted. How was that? What? That was so weird. We're supposed to be a living preview of God's future. But pointing isn't enough. We must also participate. And here's my fourth point. The church is an activist community. Now I'm going to read from James right now, and listen carefully. I think we're projecting this one too. James 2. What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such faith save them? Suppose a brother or sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you says to them, go in peace, keep warm and well fed, but does nothing about their physical needs, what good is it? In the same way, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. Those are very sobering words. The word activist might actually be a trigger for you. It might be polarizing in some settings. Some might think we're just talking about political activism or aligning the church with a particular ideological agenda. Others might see activism as exhaustion, like compassion fatigue, those types of things. What people might not understand is, along with the Apostle James, is activism simply means we act on what we believe. That's what activism is. I could have titled this point, "The Church is a Sent Community," or "A Purposeful Community," and communicated something quite similar. The point's simple. The church is not just for gathering, but it is an instrument of God in the world to bring about what he desires, now, not just in the future. I've heard that there was a prophecy given to John Wimber, who was really the founder of the Vineyard movement. Before he died, someone came up and gave him a prophecy. I have no idea whether it's true or not. I've read it somewhere on the internet. No, actually, it's in the annals of the Vineyard movement that this prophecy was given. And this is what the prophecy was to Wimber. Give me back my church so that I may give it to the world. Give me back my church so I can give it to the world. Similarly, former Archbishop of Canterbury, William Temple, said, and you may have heard something like this, but he was actually the first one that said this, the church is the only society that exists for the benefit of those who are not its members. Church, that's a recalibrated perspective. There's a natural inclination for people who come into the community of faith to continue to draw further and further in. To be a part of this means staying closer and closer together and stiff-arming anybody else that wants in, and not going out to meet them where they are. We're centrifugal. We're oriented to go out. I read a book years ago that was entitled, it was by Bill Hull. It was entitled The Disciple-Making Pastor. And in the book, Hull talked about how the church becomes malformed if all it does is take care of itself. That was never God's plan. The church was to be instrumental in the world so that those around looking in, longing for what only God can provide, at least in some sense, get a glimpse. We're not going to be able to show the whole picture. We're not until there's an ultimate consummation of all things. But the church is supposed to give a glimpse of what that looks like. It's kind of like, we're supposed to be like a trailer to a movie, where it gets kind of run out there and you can go, oh, I don't know what's going on, but I like that. Because you don't get the whole picture. That's what our call is in this activism life. God didn't call us just to huddle together in holy isolation. He called us to be sent, to love our neighbors, to pursue justice, to bring hope to the hopeless, to embody his kingdom in the everyday places where we all live and work and play. So, where does that leave us? I started this message confessing that the church is a mystery to me, and honestly it still is, but it's a mystery I've grown to love. When I sat in this empty office all those years ago, staring at the wall, trying to figure out what a pastor does and what a church is supposed to be doing, I had no idea what the answer would become so clear yet so vast. What did God want from the church? He wanted a fellowship of believers, a gathering of real people in real places, social, entering into the full range of life experiences of all people, Jesus-centered, caught up into the eternal dance of God's love, directional aspect, pointing to and living into God's future, and active, sent into the world not just to survive but to serve. I think sometimes we look at the church and we see all of its failures. By the way, the church gives way too much material for this. Hypocrisy and division and ways that we've gotten it wrong. And yes, all of that is real in large doses. But I also see what God intended. The fellowship of believers who gather not because they're perfect, but because they are human. We come together not because we have all figured it out, but because we know we need each other. We show up not because the church is done, but because God's not done with us yet. The novice pastor, staring at the wall, didn't know what he was supposed to be doing. But I'm grateful he stuck around long enough to be converted to the church, to see its wonder, to see its potential and fragility and multifaceted nature. The church is a mystery, but it's God's mystery. And he invites us, real, broken, beautiful people, to join the dance, to be a sign, to act on what we believe, and to be a fellowship. I was thinking about how I might wrap this up today, and I thought I could actually give you guys an admonition that went something like this. Now, church, go be the church. But I thought something different. The reality is, you, people of God, are the church. And the admonition is to live into our identity. Live into what God has called forth. Why God has created us together. Please pray with me. There's a level of complexity to this discussion that is betrayed in a 30-minute talk. There's so many things that in a room like this, there have been experiences that are truly beautiful and sometimes truly heinous. And we acknowledge that, Lord. But we also acknowledge that we can't not acknowledge that we are hardwired to be social, to be with. So we discover Jesus to be with him as the center. Living life that's defined by what you propose in the future, and acting out life as if we believe it's true. Lord, please help us with this, and not that there's going to be some sweeping change in anyone's life today, but I envision this talk to go into a multiple of talks that help us gain a clear understanding of what it means to be us with you. And I pray, Lord, that we could look like Jesus. When people are honest and seeking, that we would be able to portray Jesus instead of some social fabrication. Please help us, Lord. Please help us, Spirit. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.